Hey, welcome to the Off Central podcast. I'm here with Pastor Jonathan. He's not in the shot right now, but he's across from me. We can see him. And we have an amazing, incredible guest today with us, Ed Wulf. And that's Wolf spelled with a U, not an O, which I love that.
W-U-L-F.
This is, I am so excited about this. Like, I'm a little giddy. I have to say I'm a little giddy about this. I don't know why. I just... Listen, if I stood up next to Ed right now, it's intimidating. He is a monster of a man.
6'5".
And 6'5", yeah, exactly. His chair is cushiony, so he's pushed it further down, like he could wreck me if he tackled me. I mean, it's just, but so glad you're a part of this today.
Thank you for having me here.
Yeah.
I'm honored.
Yeah, tell a little bit. Give us your background a little bit on what you're doing right now.
Yeah, well, what I'm doing right now, I work for Nordstrom. I'm a general manager at one of our stores in New York.
Yeah.
I'm also leading one of our employee resource groups. Specifically around Asian Pacific Islanders. And so
really,
we're called Aspire.
No way.
Yeah. And so, just leading the efforts more on the employee engagement side of, just feeling heard, and representation has been a huge theme the last 2 years that we've been doing this. So it's really about getting engagement with the employees to understand and know that representation matters, and
So you're literally talking about the representation of your people group, right? I mean,
absolutely.
that's exactly
the whole Asian Pacific Islander diaspora.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's
Yeah.
awesome. How's it going?
It's going well. I think before the pandemic hit, it started already having a conversation, especially being here in Baltimore with the forgetting the name, Freddie Gray.
Oh yeah.
Starting that conversation really in the country, right?
Yep.
And that kind of spreading to other BIPOC communities.
Yeah.
And so I think right now in our country, a lot of people are just looking for that engagement and that feeling of belonging, and inclusion, which is a big topic, I think, in almost all corporations, companies. I mean,
even churches.
Yeah,
even churches,
right? Every organization, right?
I would love to have an Ed on staff. I mean, come on,
right? Remotely, I'll do it.
Really? Would you?
Yeah, I would.
I mean, because listen, we did some leadership training with you.
Yeah.
Our staff did, and you just, man, you blew it up. You just tore it up. I mean, you crushed it.
Yeah.
And
Thanks.
in that, I've so learned so much from that, and tried to apply some of those things and principles here.
Yeah, but it was cool actually walking through the offices. Like, I saw the first thing was core values.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that always.
Thank you, Nordstrom's.
Right. I mean, we were talking about this.
Yeah.
It's vision. It's having vision. It's also being able to declare and just ground yourself in your values and your purpose. Yeah. And I think in anything you do, that's super important. And and that's what we had gone over when you guys came over to my store, and
I remember that day as a staff. Everybody remembers that day.
Did you know Ed before that, John?
I knew Ed. Yeah, we become friends a little bit. Ed, joined our church, and we had an instant sort of connection, just very easy.
That's not what he told me.
It is,
but whatever.
Well, I just actually yesterday managed to convince him to become a groomsman at my wedding. So
I didn't even get that.
I'm sorry. I love it when you can convince an introvert, to become a part of the party.
Sure.
So begrudgingly, he said yes. No. But so I mean, not only is Ed just a cool name, great friend, but very specifically remember that day. And I remember we came back as a staff and just talking over. Ed just laid so many bombs and gems and nuggets. And if I can just brag on my friend for a second, you have a real ease and flow when it comes to your leadership. And it's something that's been so cultivated over years and years of, I would say, as a practitioner. Yeah. Not just a practitioner. You've obviously really thought it through, and you've seen what works and what doesn't work. And what we did as a staff, we reformed our whole core values after that.
We did.
That's right. I don't even know if you know that.
I didn't.
But that's the kind of impact that you have and that you carry when it comes to speaking into teams, or whether they're secular or Christian or religious or whatever. And what's also great about what you do, Ed, is you have this faith that you've had your entire life, but you work in secular dimensions, and so you really understand how those things cross-pollinate and cross over.
Way more than I would. I mean, as a pastor,
right?
I mean, that to listen to what he does in that arena is, I don't know, it's inspiring.
Yes. Yep. Well, I think you just have such a unique blend of, like you talked about, Pacific, Asian, Islanders, that whole minority, understanding diversity, inclusion, representation, secularism, Christianity. Like there's so many points that
there's certainly a intersectionality that happens, and I think as as Christians, I struggle with the fact of only being in a Christian bubble.
Yeah.
And now I'm not knocking. I've just growing up in the church and around the community, I understand how that edifies and how that lifts you up. And at the same time, we're called to be a representation of Christ to others, right? And so I take that opportunity not lightly. And I understand that my just being, it represents Christ, even though I might not outwardly say it all the time, or I don't need to wave a banner, this Christian banner, proclaiming I'm Christian. I already know who I am. And most people, when I'm able to pour into people, like they get to feel that, they get to actually experience it. And for me, that's far greater than, than having to outwardly declare it all the time, which, also isn't a bad thing. It's just in my life, how God showed up in my life. That's just been how I've been able to represent who Christ is in me.
Yeah.
So, I'm thankful that I'm given platforms, and so I'm here.
It just gives you the opportunity, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, as much as you pour into people,
Yeah.
it gives you that opportunity on the heels of that to have deeper conversations about who you are, and your relationship with God in that context. And
I was just talking to an employee who was just going through a tumultuous time right now, and I was able to speak peace. And it's funny because I'm able to kind of use references. One of the things I was telling this employee was, take time just to quiet yourself.
Right.
And just listen.
Yeah.
Like, listen to, what's that voice in you that you're hearing, and meditate, like here are the things that you have in front of you, and which path are you going to take? Right. And I'm like, that's not something for me to answer for you, but I do believe that God works, especially to those that might not know what's going on, but his hand is still moving, regardless if they can acknowledge it or not. And so it's just being sensitive to those instances where you actually can pour into people and help them. So and that's what I get to do every single day, and I think that's cool.
That's incredible. If I may, John, the diversity. Let's go back to that just for a minute.
Yeah.
What would you say to pastors, leaders that may be listening to this, within their own church, how to go about creating opportunities, especially, I mean, let's be honest, our church is predominantly white, not all the way.
Right.
We're sprinkled, a little bit, peppered, there's some color here.
Yeah.
But what would you say to a church like ours and to others that are predominantly white, how to go about creating space for that?
Yeah, well, I think a lot of time churches, they're in communities, and that's what they're built for, right? So
Sure.
You may have majority of a church demographic be Caucasian or white, which is fine. I think it's when when you have someone who may not be, you know, when I walked into this church, it just was like an immediate, it's like, I mean, things just started happening, and I knew this was where I needed to be. And, you know, and I've told you this, I literally, the reason why I started coming here was because I saw a sign. Like literally I drove past going to Costco and I just looked to the left. I'm like, oh, that sign's actually kind of cool. and you know, right after the Seventh-day Adventist sign, which is still using those like old school marquee letters.
Yeah.
You know, like I was, you know, and so, and then coming here, just the way that you all made me feel just welcomed, naturally welcomed.
Yeah.
I think is super key, you know, and then, you know, it just was, every single person here was so genuine and wanting to get to know me. And, you know, I quickly became part of this family, you know, and
big time.
And thankfully, you know, it happened so easily.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I don't know if, how other churches are set up that way. If you know, I understand, like, yes, there's greeters, there's welcomers, all that stuff, but you know, also representation does matter. You know,
Right.
I'm, you know, the first thing you know, watching your praise and worship team and just seeing diversity up there, right?
Yeah.
And so those things matter.
Yeah,
so
that's great.
Yeah, we always, often the drum that gets beaten when it comes to inclusivity and diversity is that representation word, which of course is important. You know, what you have on stage, like you said, it helps people connect if they see someone who they feel akin to or feel connected to. But I like that you didn't start with that. You actually started with the most important thing is just basic care, love. Like that's ultimately, like you can have all the representation in the world, but if you're not nice to everybody walking through that door, like if you're self-seeking or you're just looking at people as conduits for use, like I can use this person in my ministry, I could use this person to serve here, rather than I can connect with this person because I love them.
Right.
Like all the representation in the world doesn't really matter.
Yeah. And also, you know, I would probably say representation, I use that, and diversity, I use that not just in skin color either. I mean, it was also like there were I saw young people, I saw you know, I saw a variety of folks, I saw families, I got singles, you know, it wasn't just the color of skin as well. It's there's so many things that pop up when, you know, when you're first trying to experience a church or even coming in, it's daunting. You know, for me, I've moved so much in my career, and thankfully God's just opened doors for me to do that. And so, you know, thankfully I've been able to get plugged in with church families, and it's like, I'm just thankful for that.
Well, I mean, you are 6'5".
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like you don't stand out in the crowd.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? But what's, and I joke, I jest, but to me, you ooze of favor on your life. Like that, it's so evident. I'm sure it is to Jonathan as well, and to others that's been around you, but you just ooze of the favor of God on your life.
That's actually a really good way of describing Ed's life. I've never articulated it that way, but the stories you tell me, I'm like, what?
I know.
What's going on? Like, where's this favor? Give me a piece of that. If I just hang around with Ed,
well, it's like Bishop Jake says, you know, favor ain't fair, and Ed has all of it. He's just not sharing it right now.
No.
You know, it's funny you guys say that. I've just been meditating on Proverbs, and that's just a lot of my devotionals have been in Proverbs, and I think it's Proverbs 11 that talks about wisdom and how if you seek God's wisdom, you have favor. And I just thought that was it's
good.
You know, I immediately called my parents. I'm like, this is what, you know, and I've always thought favor was this thing that wasn't just imparted, but almost like you had to earn it or protect it, or, you know, there's so many things there that I've just had to unpack, and just reading that scripture and it just made it so simple.
Yeah.
You know, when you seek God's wisdom, you're seeking his favor as well. And those two things are connected.
Yeah. That's good.
So anyways.
That's good. You've led through some turbulent times.
Yeah.
Through the coronavirus and how that affected retail space, all those things. I heard this quote, and I didn't even know what we were going to talk about today, to be honest with you, because Pastor Jonathan is so much smarter than I am. So I said, Pastor Jay, can you put some stuff together? But he started talking about leadership, that kind of context. And I was like, and I was listening to a podcast myself, and I heard this quote, and Peter Drucker said, during the time of turbulence, the greatest danger is not turbulence, it's operating with yesterday's logic. In other words, what you did in 2019 wasn't going to fly in 2020 for you.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah. Yeah.
How you managed through that leadership wise. And
yeah.
I know.
That's a
I
lot.
know, right? It's a lot. But.
Well, it's like a clatter. Can't even speak. You just speak me up with how intelligent I am. I can't use my words. It was a cataclysmic change for obviously everyone. But I know the high street was massive, obviously. Some came out really well. Some had to shift entire thinking, business models, leadership structures, training structures. All of this gets undone. You kind of like are starting from scratch again. And you're working for a company it's a big company. Mm-hmm. I don't know how much money they make every year, but probably more than we do. Maybe.
Just a thought.
Just a touch more.
Yeah.
And so I think with something like that's multiple locations all over the country, you're dealing with so many different managers, leaders, structures, a whole system that you've spent how many years building up, and now change it immediately.
Right.
As a store manager, just talk me through your process from the beginning of coronavirus to how do we begin to shift things? How do we think differently?
Yeah.
Because it's still shifting.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. But anyway,
So two parts. First, I'm going to talk about people, right? And understanding that it's still that people piece and the focus on people that has kind of, it needed to be amplified in terms of understanding empathy to what was going on and know that, people are struggling. And, how I framed it was, me and my team, we have the opportunity to continue to serve during this time. And
servant leader.
Isn't it interesting? There's so few people. Sorry to interrupt you, Ed. There's so few people that would use the word of serving in a secular environment.
Yeah. Absolutely.
But it's so interesting. That is your perspective. That's how you teach people.
Well, that's just what we do every single day. We get to serve our community. Yeah. And it's so crazy because people, it's just shopping. It's just buying clothes. But to know and understand how that makes people feel innately, there is an opportunity to actually, it's crazy to change people's lives, and I hear it all the time. That's awesome. Real quick, I had an employee that's been with us only for a year. And this customer wrote a letter to the Nordstrom family and myself, and just talking about how her son had just been diagnosed with cancer, and as she was going through the men's department, and she started tearing up, and my employee had just immediately recognized what was going on, just as she was rummaging through coats and scarves and whatnot, and he went up to her and asked, how are you, and how can I make this easier for you?
Wow. That should be like the tagline for every pastor. Yeah. Try, you know what I mean? Because our initial mode is someone's crying, I've got 20 answers for you.
Yeah.
This is what you need to do. Gosh, this is how you fix it. Let me pray for you. God,
Hey, I'm guilty of
stuff.
that.
Yeah,
I'm so guilty of that.
But what two great questions. How are you? Yeah. How can I make this easier for you?
And so as she was, the letter she was writing, she had said something, and that just stood out to me. She said, this employee, he had showed me more humanity and care than my own close circle of friends and family have. And it's so crazy because it goes back to, what we do. It's simple, but not easy.
Yeah.
And, I dumb it down to, we just sell clothes. Our purpose is to make people feel good and look their best. That's it.
Yeah.
But we have the opportunity to show up and actually touch people's lives and just connect with people on a daily basis, right? And it's the same thing that the church does every single day. I mean,
Yeah.
And we're serving that purpose in a different way. So the people side has always been a huge focus. We're it's like walking through the fog. It's, you can't see what's in front of you. You just know that you have to keep putting one foot in front of the other and just keep walking. And thankfully, we're empowered to create spaces that help us care for our community and our employees and our folks. So that part probably amplified even more during this time.
Right. Like the responsibility's greater, or there was more training around it, or?
Well, we just had we had a pivot. I think that's going to be, that's been the word of the last 2 years is pivot, right? Yeah. But at the end of the day, I think that human connection is what, I don't know if anyone, you can't subtract that or take that out of the equation.
Yeah.
It's just, people are akin to wanting to be around other people. And that's been very true to how we've been seeing this progress and how we're kind of, hopefully on the endemic side, and we're seeing more folks more comfortable coming out. I mean, there's
the foot traffic has gone up.
I mean, December, my foot traffic was higher than in December 2019.
Wow.
That's insane, actually.
That's telling, isn't it?
So more people are walking into the store now than before,
Correct.
any word of virus or anything was spread around.
So that need, right?
Yeah.
And so during this time, we were just able to kind of equip ourselves, ready to go for, anything happening during the day,
Man, you're pastoring more people than you know.
Yeah.
You're actually a pastor. I'm serious. The stories that he has, they're better than ours. But your heart, dude, you, as big as you are, your heart's way bigger. I'm serious. It's just like, I'm actually tearing up a little bit because it's just hearing that story is like, this guy actually is pastoring people. And he doesn't know it. Yeah. Or maybe you do.
No, I didn't.
And I'm not giving you the benefit of the doubt.
I never actually put those two together.
You are essentially making people feel better about themselves. That's what God does. He makes us feel better about ourselves, because we all know we all beat ourselves up.
Oh, for sure.
And the world beats us up even more, but it's, or we could be our worst enemy. And yet you're bringing people in and ministering to them in such a different way than the church would, and yet it's accomplishing similar things.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Well, it's the model, really, isn't it? Well, like what Ed's doing. He doesn't have to put on the hat of pastor. Will now play Pastor Ed. I just am who I am with people, and because I care about you, I'm actually going to show that I care about you. And, it's like Scripture says, we're called a kingdom of priests. It's
That's
not
right.
one priest and a kingdom around that priest.
That's right.
Which is still the
problem.
church model.
Yeah.
And I always tell people, I don't want to be put up on any kind of pastor's pedestal, preacher's pedestal, priest pedestal, whatever word you want to use, so that you can take me down later when you realize that I'm not perfect. Or when I fail and it's public, and now you're all saying, oh, he's not perfect. Well, I never claimed to be. But you're such a great model of what happens when a whole church takes up the responsibility of bringing in comfort and peace and shalom to people's lives.
Even within the secular.
Within the secular world, whatever.
Secular world,
it's just your world, wherever that is. I think predominantly people like Ed or people of, let's say, the church, people who don't work on staff in a church, their greatest mode of being able to disciple and reach out to people is through their vocation.
Yeah. No question.
And that to me is like exact model. Like if everybody in church, everyone, electricians, plumbers, mothers, teachers, scientists, doctors, like if everybody was treating other people and creating cultures like that, isn't that kind of like the kingdom of God being expanded outside of the four walls of the church? And like what you're being able to do in such a enormous company is huge, and it's so easy to write it off as I sell clothes.
I know,
but I could do that too. I just talk for 20 minutes once every 2 weeks. You know, it's easy to write that off as it's not important, but actually it's where it's at. It's the central thing.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That's good. Yeah.
That's really good, man.
We love what you do, Ed. We love you, Ed.
You're just, you know, when you're around people that ooze favor, you know, you're and people wouldn't even know what to call that, right? Most people wouldn't know what that is, but how can I word this? We've talked so well of him. I feel like we're not at Ed's funeral. I mean, I'm standing here. I'm talking.
Do you need me to take over? Is that what you're looking at me?
No, I just. He's such a magnet. Person.
Totally. That's
magnetic.
There's a lot of charisma about Ed and personality, but he's more than that.
Yet
he's
introverted.
A hard worker.
But yet introverted. Right. At his core.
Yeah.
You know, don't talk to me. I'm at home.
Right.
You know.
Well, I think the thing with it's probably you know, since you've been liking it to kind of like pastoral and what the church does, I'm like, there's so many parallels that I'm getting at now and understanding. I have to retreat myself because I'm pouring into folks.
That's right.
Yeah.
You know, I have 400 to 500 employees at any given time. So, and I put myself out there to listen to what's going on and try to make amends to whatever needs to be amended or and so I do. I have to retreat and take time for myself to replenish myself.
People don't understand how exhausting, tiring, and sapping. And it's not because you don't care, but it's because you care.
It's because you care.
Which is why it requires so much. When somebody is pouring their heart out, you told a story of a woman with cancer, and when somebody's pouring their heart out, you focus in to that one thing so intently and intensely that it just saps everything out of you. And you know, your wife will know this, Pearl. My wife, she's sitting in the background here. Another introvert. She loves it when I put the limelight on her. My favorite thing to do. But she'll know this after a Sunday, you know, pouring and people coming up to you and they're crying. It just like, you know, even the greatest extrovert goes, oh, I'm finished. And being able to retreat and having the self-awareness to go, I need these moments right now.
So did you ever struggle during the pandemic with all that you were doing, giving out? Because I know it's all hands on deck. It wasn't like it was here at church. It was all hands on deck. And because me personally, I learned a hard lesson during that. It didn't hit me in 2020. It hit me in 2021 when I literally had a panic attack, and I've never had anxiety one day in my life. And it hit me out of the blue. And I thought, this is it. It's over for me, because I didn't know what it was.
Yeah, right.
Understanding it. Carrying all of that through 2020 and leading into 2021, I struggled, I have to say, personally, with a little bit of a season there. Yeah.
I mean, you know, and on top of that, for me, you know, I moved in the middle of a pandemic, so we got the store open here in Towson, and literally the day that the day that we opened that store is when I got the call. You know, hey Ed, we'd like you to come up to New York and to lead the Westchester store and get that store open.
We were upset about that, by the way.
Yeah, not happy.
You know?
Yeah,
It was gnarly because I had already, you know, I already thought, I'm like, okay, I'm probably going to have to be here several more years. Totally fine with that. And instead, there was a different plan, and so I moved, and it was tough because the store I took over, it just needed kind of an overhaul, you know, of really, and mainly of just culture and just bringing people back in. You know, so it was extremely tough. And, you know, there were a lot of moments where I just questioned God, why'd you bring me up here? What purpose do you have me doing? This is too much for me to handle. And, you know, the amount of issues arising. And, you know, thankfully I had a really great mentor, my boss who brought me up there. There's just, it's incredible the amount of humanity that I got to experience and receive just from folks that were supporting me, to make sure I was able to support others. And I was just super grateful because in those moments where I wanted to, you know, look to do something else, you know, I just got regrounded in what my purpose was. And thankfully, you know, I was able to punch through it and continue going, you know.
That's awesome.
But yeah, like those times are tough. Those are the moments where, you know, I get on my knees and I just pray.
Yeah.
That is, when my back is against the wall, it's the only response I have.
Yeah.
Right. And so yeah, you know, I go through my home and I'll have, you know, I'll just have these moments with God where, I'm just, you know, praying in tongues, I'm worshiping, I'm, you know, crying, I'm yelling. I mean, you know, just wrestling. You
sound like David
it's
in the Bible. You know?
It's the whole point of like wrestling with God. Like, you know?
That's good.
Yeah. And that God can handle that.
Absolutely.
He can handle the frustration, the anger. That's a big, you know, there's one thing to have a work pivot, but life pivot, location, friends,
everything.
church community.
Turned upside down.
All of it turned upside down, within a month. Like, okay, let's do this. Cool.
So it is cool because now, not that I'm coasting at all, but you're just starting to see things.
You got a rhythm to your life.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
That's absolutely it.
Yeah.
And now I'm here talking about it with you guys.
This is awesome. I love it. Love it.
Yeah, exactly. But I think you have such a unique perspective to bring, you know, to lots of people who will listen to this, Christians and non-Christians. And I think I love your posture as well of getting down on your knees in a world where everybody has the answer. And if they don't have the answer, they'll Google the answer. I think to approach life with a sense of humility, like, no, I'm just going to get on my hands and knees for a second here and just admit I'm out of my depth.
Yeah.
And I'm angry.
Yep.
And I'm tired or frustrated, whatever the word is, emotionally drained, whatever it is you're going through, whatever it is you were going through, and just say, God, why? And help. Yeah. Those two things would be great.
Yeah, I think there's that notion. I was speaking to you about it, of humbling yourself. Like if there is one quality that I would impart to any of my leaders that I work with, or it's being able to approach things with that humble spirit. You know, I know I don't know everything.
Right.
And I don't need to know everything.
Yeah.
And I think people, when you're dealing with people and the dynamics of people, I think where if you're in terms of an employee to a supervisor or whatnot, and you know, I think so many people spend so much time trying to put on the facade like they are the all-knowing one. You know, they're in charge.
Yeah.
Right. And I get that. There are moments where I do need to step up and
sure,
for sure. But I think there's also we miss those opportunities where we can actually be human with others and connect with people in our trying to figure this out together.
But it starts by being honest and authentic with yourself.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the disconnect often comes, is people won't even at home go, I don't know what I'm doing. Or get to that point where just by themselves they can get on their hands and knees, let alone in front of other people, a community of people. And I don't know how you find this. I work with young people. I'm sure you hire lots of young people. Maybe it's just as I get older, I think more this way, but the younger they are, the more they seem to know. And I, pejoratively, like the more they seem to think they know. Just I wish they'd come to me just to ask for a second. I don't know if that's true in your world.
Don't you think that's how God feels about us?
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
Yeah.
I wish you'd asked.
I just wish you'd asked before you made that decision.
Right?
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
But the thing is, to throw another quote out there really quick. I don't know how much time we have, but Oswald Chambers said, "Let God be original with others as he was with you."
Huh.
I love that.
That's good.
Because your journey's not my journey. We both have different journeys. All of our journeys in this room, from Alex, Christina, Amanda, all of us have different journeys with this. And I think it's allowing their journey, not judging their journey. It needs to be like mine. No, Ed's is going to be way different. And I'm going to allow Ed to have his time, whatever he needs to do, scream at God, whatever. I'm not going to judge that part. I don't think I've ever screamed at God like that, but that's okay. Maybe I need to, that's how I look at it. Maybe I need to do that
Feels
sometimes.
good. Just let it out.
Jonathan,
let it go.
Yeah. Maybe I need to do that.
We could do a little screaming session maybe.
Okay.
After, we'll just find a room and let's do it.
How about I take notes and then you guys, and I'll take notes on what to scream about.
There we go.
But it's not, I'm not going to judge that journey. And I think everybody, as they walk this thing out, has a different road,
for sure,
and a different path, because we're just different.
Yeah,
in many ways.
We're all called to do different things, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's such a simple way of putting it. Yeah. We're called to do different things, so you have to equip people differently.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so when you're working with employees or something like that, it's like, that employee, even though they need to have the same core values and the same heart as the mission of where you're going, right, they're going to be different on how you relate to them, approach them, right? Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, and each person, and I am thankfully I have this gift where I'm able to really meet people where they're at, not expect people to meet me where I'm at.
That's great, man. I love that.
And
I ought to steal that quote. Somebody write that down.
Clip it.
Yeah, can you say that again? Can you say it again?
I know.
It's probably so original.
Well, thankfully it's recorded.
Yeah, there we
go.
But I want to use it.
But approach people where they're at.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Don't expect people to be where you are because they haven't taken the path you've taken.
That's right.
And be humble enough to go, I'm interested enough to learn where you're at and to approach you there.
Yeah. That's great.
That's good.
Was that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it's awesome, man. So glad to have you today, man. This is so good.
Thanks for having me.
This is just fantastic, and we so appreciate your time.
Feels good to be home.
Yeah. Oh, you said home.
Oh, you catch that.
You said home. You said home.
We're writing up the contract as you speak.
I got proposals right here. Well, thanks for tuning in, everybody. I hope in some way that this podcast enriches your life. God bless.